In this episode, my friend Barry Dyke and I discuss private equity and what they're currently doing in the life insurance industry. We discuss Wall Street and how they de-risk and what they're doing with their pensions. And then we also talk about his updated book that should be available in October of 2022. Now, we had fun and hope you enjoy listening. Thank you. Welcome to the Banking with Life podcast. I'm your host, James Neathery. And I'm as excited as always to have our good friend Barry Dyke on with us. He's always very gracious and willing to share his time and his knowledge. And, you know, he's a friend. There's no question about that. He's a colleague within the industry. He's the researcher among researchers. He's a speaker. He's an author. He has his podcast. And a lot of his information is in the notes below. And we're always excited to have him. Hello, Barry. How are you, sir?
It's always good to see my friend James Neathery. Always good to see you. God bless you. I love it, man. Keep pushing back the frontiers of ignorance, my friend.
Yes, sir. You do the same. I will do my part, right? Thank you. Now, look, you sent an article a couple of weeks ago, and I got to admit, I haven't read the whole thing. As a matter of fact, I haven't even read it. I perused it, and I perused it enough to, know that it's always it meets your standards. It's always good information that you share. And the title is "Beware of Private Equity Gobbling Up Life Insurance and Annuity Companies," and that was by, let's see,
Eileen Applebaum, right?
Yep, Eileen Applebaum. So thanks for sharing that.
She's a great lady. She's a pistol. She's Eileen Applebaum. I get to know her. Oh, she was, 5-6 years ago when I started researching private equity and how big it is in the financial space. And people don't really understand private equity. James, you and I have discussed it before, but private equity now is gone from a sliver of Wall Street business, and really from the 1980s to now a major main component of the whole Wall Street cesspool, if you will. Okay, and
right.
So generally the power centers of private equity, which is actually was known as leveraged buyouts of corporate raiders from the 1980s. These are the companies who bought the companies with boatloads of debt, junk debt, issued by the likes of Michael Milken from Drexel Bertel Lambert, which went into bankruptcy, and then but anyhow, this fueled the whole speculative bubble in the 1980s, and which eventually led to the collapse of Executive Life.
Right.
Which is essentially was the largest collapse of a life company of all time.
A plus rated life insurance company out of California.
Yeah, well, and lots of Wall Street smoke and mirrors, financial sorcery behind it as well. So the whole Executive Life is, when you look at Executive Life, what happened, actually they went into receivership in 1991. And it was the largest collapse of a life company of all time. Now, unlike other people who have their money in mutual funds and like that, policyholders did not really get wiped out of the principal, but it was a disastrous tale of what can happen when Wall Street gets involved with conservative investing. And Executive Life collapsed in 91. And it was sold to a French bank, Credit Lyonnais, and it was engineered by a guy named Leon Black, who's now the former CEO of Apollo Global Management. And this is a transaction. It was totally illegal to do it at the time. It was prior to the repeal of Glass-Steagall Act. It was also against the law in the state laws of California about a foreign entity could not own a domestic insurer. So it was totally illegal. Nothing ever happened. The Executive Life went into receivership in 91. Nothing really came into light until a whistleblower, still a named whistleblower to this day, came forth in 1999 explaining the shenanigans about Credit Lyonnais behind this thing. There wasn't an investigation by Congress until 2002. So James, the investigation is 11 years after the fact, okay? And then in 2003, Credit Lyonnais was fined $770 million for essentially participating in a totally illegal transaction. They made about $3.5 billion. Leon Black and Apollo Global Management made about $1 billion. This gave the seed capital to create Apollo Global Management, and so the credit liens got fined, but nothing ever happened to anybody, and the same old doo-doo is happening. This is 20, 30 years later, and when you look at what we're comprised of executive life, it was primarily junk bonds, and so now now we're seeing the same thing with private equity, and so it's gone from a very small piece of finance, James, to a huge component of it. It's always debt based, and it's always involved lots of leverage, and it's very, very shaky. And but the problem with this is that a lot of companies have failed under private equity ownership, and so much that I've tracked this back to about since the year 2000. You know how many major companies have gone bankrupt under private equity ownership, James?
No, I don't, but you do. So lay it on us.
I do. Okay. But roughly about 300 major corporations that I've found that have gone bankrupt under private equity ownership. So it's very, very, and they have everything's lawyered up. So when they go bankrupt, they never get hurt. And so people say, well, I know who's leveraged by it, who's private equity. I said, well, you ever hear of little companies called Chrysler Motors?
Yeah.
Well, that was owned by private equity. They went bankrupt. You ever hear of a little company called Toys R Us? Yeah, they went bankrupt. You ever hear of iHeartRadio? Yeah. The old Clear Channel, which was in Texas, they went bankrupt in private equity ownership. Or one of the largest utilities in Texas, the old TXU, which was now Energy Future Holdings, one of the largest leveraged buyouts of all time, went bankrupt.
The shoe stores, and look, Michael Milken, that's where he was selling the junk bond king back in the day, right? He did some time behind bars, and
not much time though.
No, but the junk bond king, that's where he was selling all the bonds, executive life, and then when he gets out of prison, I believe some arm of the government hired him to help them figure out how to find crooks and criminals in the financial industry.
Yeah, and actually, I think he's kind of been banned from the securities business for life, but he's been a special consultant to Guggenheim Partners, which is a private equity firm out of New York. And so now he's worth billions, and he has the big Michael Milken conference, and he's on CNBC, and I don't know, Fox or what other, the Bloomberg, whatever. And so unfortunately, the press really idolizes these private equity financiers when in reality, they're kind of like, they're wolves in sheep's clothing. Lots of times, and so private profits and public losses. Public takes a risk, and they make the profits privately. Yeah. Yeah. So the whole thing, when you look at it, so the whole thing is you and I are business people, and if we default on a loan or go bankrupt, we get in a lot of trouble. But the way it's with private equity is that they have so many holding companies. If they go bankrupt, they still get paid. And people say, what's so bad about it? Well, lots of times they'll dump pension obligations, and now they want to get into the retirement space. They want to get into it in a big, big, big way. But to me, I think it's unconscionable when you look at companies that have been owned by private equity, which have ended up in bankruptcy, and then the taxpayer ends up holding onto the bag of the failed pensions. And people don't believe me. Well, look at a company like Hawker Beechcraft, which was one of the second largest commercial business jet companies. They went bankrupt. We ended up picking up the pension costs. A&P grocery stores, Aloha Airlines, Anchor Glass, GMAC, which is now Allied Financial. And that was so clever. They dumped the pension benefits onto the PBG before they acquired them. And then GMAC ended up going bankrupt. We had to put $17.8 billion into them as a taxpayer. And they threw a bunch of companies overboard into bankruptcy. More financial sorcery. They renamed it Allied Financial. Brought it public. And people said, and when I saw this, I said, where did Allied Financial come from? And it was the old GMAC. So it's a much, much bigger portion of the U.S. economy and also worldwide. what causes me alarm is that, getting back to the executive life case, it's estimated that Leon Black made, I don't know, somewhere between $500 million to $1 billion in profits. It's estimated that the Credit Lyonnais made around $3.5 billion in profits. But here's the bad thing, and I've got the numbers to back me up. Between the Executive Life of New York, which is the New York domiciled life company, and Executive Life of California, my calculation is pretty good, and I got congressional testimony to back me up on this, and the NOLA figures, that roughly the state guaranteed reserve funds had to dump about $3.8 billion to make policyholders whole. So Executive Life is a small company back then. So my question is not now. According to Moore Market Intelligence out of Cheryl Moore, great lady out of Des Moines, Iowa. She's researching the annuity business. Roughly 40% of the annuity business is backed by life insurance controlled by private equity, which is the alarm bell should have gone off. But when the last life carrier Executive Life collapsed, it took 11, 12 years for an investigation. So the government doesn't really work that fast.
Why do you think the alarm bells are not going off? People don't care. People are not aware. People are getting paid. Why do you think that the alarm bells are not going off?
Because we have the best democracy money can buy.
Oh my God.
Okay.
There you go. Don't let the facts get in the way. Right?
So I stole that from a guy.
I know.
Actually, Greg Powell. So I think he was a reporter, investigative report. We did a book called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. So why does that frighten me? So most people don't know that all these major companies have gone bankrupt under private equity ownership. But now what has happened is in June of 2020, the Department of Labor allowed private equity as a part of a target date fund into 401k retirement plans, James. So we have these these target date funds are very complicated. And you have the books, and people can go to barrydyke.com. I wrote that book in 2012. Pirates of Manhattan 2, Highway to Serfdom, but I wrote all about it. But the thing is that target date funds were bad then, because in 2008, James, they lost 30%. So, but the Department of Labor gave them the green light in June of 2020. And then the SEC essentially given them another blessing the past fall. And then there was a landmark case, which just was ruled on. I was just reading about the other day about Intel, the chip maker. They try to bring a class action suit about allowing alternative investments to 401ks. So now it looks like a green light for massive speculation. And that's just private equity in leveraged buyouts, hedge funds, distressed debt, all kinds of crap at Wall Street. Very, very, very high fee stuff, and so you're just trying to get insulate people from that as much as we possibly can, which I know you and I are trying to do.
Yep. Well, the pensions across the country, have used too high of an expected rate of return, so they have to do something. They've got to do something in the low interest rate environments that we've been in a while, right? Don't we need all of these speculative opportunities within our pensions? I mean, think about that.
Well, it's a disaster when you look at it. It's another book, and I'm updating one of my books, James, now, and it's a disaster when you look at a company, a state like Pennsylvania. I think roughly about 50% of their assets are in alternative investments, which are private equity, distressed debt, all this kind of crap, and they're searching for yield. Yeah. And this stuff it's hotel. I call it Hotel California money. You can get in, but you can never leave. Okay, right. And the thing is that so it's a disaster. So and then you look at your states now. Texas is a pretty good state where you're at. Yeah. But if you look at a state like Illinois or
California,
Kentucky, they're just a mess. Yeah. And so you know, everyone wants to go indexing the whole thing. There's problems with that. But so the problem is that private equity is becoming a huge component of the whole Wall Street, and most people don't understand it. Most advisors don't understand it. Okay, but it's pretty simple. It's gambling with other people's money, using it with lots of debt, and they've been able to do that because of all the tax deductions they get. They're getting a deduction for all interest costs. They're getting the carried interest. So the profits they get are tax and capital gains rates. So it's really a bonanza for Wall Street and financiers. But it's caused a lot of just horrific damage to the American economy. And I think, you know, what we do is not just about the money. People need to know what's going on.
Yeah. You know, I agree. And let me say here that, you know, I'm still encouraging you. And just for the listener, I've encouraged Barry to write a standalone book, not update a previous book. No pressure, but that's still my encouragement, Barry.
So I don't have an hours in the day. I've been running business. So writing the books is fun. You know, it opens up a lot of doors, but the advisement, you know, is stuff that pays the bills. But people, you know, the big challenge, James, today is for people. So we have all these 401ks, these 403bs. They're all the same, IRAs, whatever. It's all about gambling with other people's money. You know, a new toaster has more guarantees than a 401k. You know, this is where the money. You know, it really does. You know, and so the thing is, in retirement, when people, you know, I would say between 55 and 78, they really need to have, you know, structural guarantees and income streams for their retirement. This is what they really need. And oh, by the way, the Secure Act is talking about this, okay? But the thing is that people still need advisors like you or me, because the institutions, you know, they really don't care as long as they can hold on to the assets. Yeah. People still need independent advice. They still need loving, caring more than ever. But the whole thing is annuities in life insurance are what is called TINA. There is no alternative. And that's why, and I told you about, you know, the guaranteed income book, which I'm updating. I will show people conclusively that major corporations throughout the world are using annuities and life insurance products to fund their retirement plans. You know, I've never gotten a lick of good. I've never gotten a lick of good press in the international press at all, James.
All right.
But you know, I started looking at this, and I looked at the media companies who are buying annuities. Like the New York Times bought one. The New York Times bought $460 million worth of annuities to fund their pension plan. CBS News bought one for $800 million. McClatchy, the newspapers. I mean, so all these. So the whole thing is that so what these media companies are telling people to do in their advertising through their in their editorial narrative is that life insurance annuities are bad, when in fact they're top of the pile of hypocrites. Yeah,
that's exactly what they're buying, what they're putting their money into.
Exactly,
looking for the guarantees. Yep.
Yeah, and so it all makes all sense, and you know, and if you, so I studied this, and luckily because of researching the latest book, I got to meet a guy by the name of Jeremy Gold. Jeremy Gold was a famous actuary. He was, you know, he went to MIT when he was like 16. Very, very bright guy.
Wow.
And he dropped out of MIT and hitched across country playing pool and stuff like that. And then finally got his degree like at Pace University and became an actuary. And he worked for Buck Consultants. He was the first actuary really to work on Wall Street at Morgan Stanley. And he was telling me about doing the leverage buyouts in the 1980s and how he used the excess pension assets to help do a leverage buyout of a company. And he kind of had his own, although he was very Jewish, he had kind of a come to Jesus moment. He said, this is what I'm doing is really bad. So at the tender age of 53, he went and got his PhD in economics from Wharton. And people don't believe me, just Google it, Jeremy Gold. And so he started trying to bring ethics back into the pension profession because he thought it was wrong using pension reserves to do leverage buyouts of companies. And so, we talked a lot about, how to run good retirement funds. He agreed that, good retirement funds should be run like a life insurance company. He saw the writing on the wall. He was blackballed from his industry essentially for telling the truth. And I tried to get him onto my radio show a couple of times when I had the radio show, and then unfortunately he died of leukemia. But he was a good guy. But he told me, he told me, we talked about the pension dumping and the whole thing. So when you look back in the 80s, it was, we called the leverage buyouts the corporate raiders. Today it's called private equity. It's all about the name game. I mean, it's all about semantics, And so it's and instead of junk bonds, they call them high yield.
Right.
Okay. So the whole thing is this. So people now more than ever, they really want to, and when you look at the numbers behind this stuff, James, people are really going to be best off with a good mutual company or a fraternal organization of some sort, because we don't know what they're doing with the mutual companies. And there's another guy you should probably have on your show at some point, but who's done forensic accounting. But with some of these private equity firms, what they do, they're offloading all the risks into reinsurance companies based in Vermont or Arizona or Bermuda. Yeah. So, and if it goes to Bermuda, like Athene's headquartered in Bermuda, or Global Atlantic is headquartered in Bermuda. So
Nassau Re, yep.
Yeah. So Nassau Re, I think that's Guggenheim coming. They're all. So we have no idea really what's behind these guys.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, the life insurance companies really are the best of the stewards of money. But then again, so if you're going to use life insurance, who do you use? And when you do the research, it's mutuals or fraternals, because there's no inherent conflict of interest. But I don't spend hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising, even our own industry magazines, as you see now. I mean, Athene. Every time I open up like an Advisor News or something like that, Athene and all that stuff, and it's like people really knew.
Yeah. But
they don't.
Yeah, I don't read those magazines, so but I know of what you speak. I see them and throw them away. Let me run this by, because this is what I think, and it's just conjecture, right? Or maybe I've been a student of history. So if we look at the 7702 change, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 1921 or 2021, that changed the interest rates that a life insurance company must use to determine the MEC and their basis of values, right? And I want to say this, that a mutual life insurance company, they are operating with a lower rate of return compared to a stock life insurance company when it comes to life insurance, okay?
Yep.
All right. Now, and we're in a low interest rate environment, so the companies have and I'm not shilling for the life insurance companies. I'm just saying it's sometimes a struggle to be profitable in a low interest rate environment for an extended period of time anyway, an extended low interest rate environment. And if you can't be profitable there, and so a mutual company is already operating on a smaller margin compared to a stock company, they've got to make that difference up somewhere. So with this change that was slipped in like 2 days before Christmas, I believe, into this bill that became law, that now forces the life insurance companies to use a lesser rate of return, right, to calculate to construct a life insurance policy. Now, that is, and ultimately that produces less death benefit or causes the death benefit to be higher or more costly. A lower death benefit, so the death benefit costs more money, right?
More money,
Okay. Now, I think it is more than coincidental that and this is not new, but the movement of private equity into the life insurance space is not happening in a vacuum. I think the companies that are going to profit most from that change are the stock companies that are being gobbled up by the private equity companies. Now, just tell me I'm wrong, Barry, that we can.
No, you're not wrong. And the thing is that there's, but what they're using these, James, but they're using them as their own banks. The Federal Reserve's done a piece on, our life insurance companies, the new shadow banks. And so what they're doing, see, there's no one who's better, stewards of capital than a major life company, whether, a New York Life or, Northwestern or, Mass Mutual, these companies, they have to look out 20, 30 years. The thing is that, but they have to be conservative on this. And so, but when you have the stock ownership, then you have additional masters, and for them to compete, and this is the whole thing. When I saw this, see, executive life got really big 30, 40 years ago, James, because executive life was showing 200 to 300 basis points and 203% more than everyone else. It's saying you can't be with a traditional life company. Come to executive life because we know how to get yield. All right, that's what we get. Well, guess what? It's the same thing that's happening now. So the private equity firms, primarily on things like index annuities, things like that, they're showing, 100, half to 100 basis points or to 200 basis points more than a traditional solid company. But the problem is we don't know what the riskiest assets are in these things. And when they're domiciled in Bermuda or Vermont or Arizona, we don't have a freaking clue. And the thing is that so the reason why I'm talking about this is because this is definitely a problem. The reserve ratios are definitely a problem. And and Mark Twain said history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure rhymes. When you look at executive life and you look at a company like Athene, it's haven't we been here before? And I think more market intelligence out of Des Moines, Iowa, and Cheryl Moore. She's a wonderful, wonderful lady. She said roughly about 40% of all the annuity premium is going to private equity, and this is. I think when you're talking about people's retirement money, we really have to be conservative and really and treat people their money like it's our own. But Wall Street, their whole thing is let's gamble with other people's money.
Right. And they make the profits and turn the losses public. So, it really is about safety in your money. Where do you put your money? Who do you trust? And guarantees, especially as we get older, we're moving into retirement income. We want guarantees typically. And then we'd also like, some asset protection. And that varies across the country, right? But like in the great state that I live in, we have 100% asset protection with life insurance and annuities, right?
And annuities, it's great state.
Florida, and I don't know all of them, but
Arizona and New York's pretty good. Yeah, so
California's got to be the worst.
No, I'm not being a crazy man either, okay, on this stuff. So what am I worried about private equity? So there has been some blow-ups. There was a guy named Lindbergh in North Carolina, whatever, now it's Charles Lindbergh. I forget what the guy, he was the head of private equity owned life company. He went, essentially, I think he's in jail right now. There's other instances of private equities being involved in Conseco. Remember the old Conseco, James?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Thomas H. Lee, partners out of Boston, the private equity firm, made a $500 million investment into Conseco and then in preferred shares. And they ended up going, I think it's one of the top 50 bankruptcies of all time. So there's other things. And then we're seeing the reserves using for these leveraged buyouts. So these private equity firms like the pools of capital they have with them, in the same way, gee whiz, we can use these funds here to finance our deals, and also collect fees, high fees each way.
Yeah, I think the assets of Conseco wound up somewhere in the Bahamas. After a few name changes.
Yeah. And the irony of the whole thing, this is I learned from Cheryl Moore out of Des Moines. She's a wonderful lady, and she's in that movie I'm in. But the guy Hilbert, who bankrupted Conseco, now has a new life company, James, in Utah. It's called Silac, and it's like in the top 10 carriers right now. So people now more than ever, they really need someone like you and me, really, for insight. And but the wonderful thing is that that friend of mine, Eileen Applebaum, about the private equity article, and she's a great lady, man. She's like 85, James, and she's a pistol. And she has no fear. And she essentially says that we got something to worry about. And it's outside of industry. And she knows private equity just as well as anybody. So what we're trying to do is getting people having good organic financial products, whereas everyone else wants us to eat junk food. And private equity is pretty much junk food.
Yep. So you mentioned Cheryl Moore. She's been in the industry a long time, and she was interviewed in that movie, the Baby Boomer Dilemma.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you were in there as well, and a lot of other people. I haven't watched it yet, but what'd you talk about?
Well, that was a blessing. About this time last year, I was coming back from Florida, and a domestic documentary filmmaker, Doug Orchard from Florida, he says, "You don't know me, but my name's Doug Orchard, and I've been hired by some investors to do a film about retirement income because it's a major problem." And here was this guy, Doug Orchard. He's a very sharp guy. He's like 52, but he looks like a 26-year-old surfer. He's incredibly fit in shape, and he said, "I'm doing a movie," and the investors said they want to have me in it. And so I said, "Oh, that's a blessing." So we got chatting, and so then I did a piece in the movie for a bit, and my piece was essentially cut out in the end because the filmmakers were worried about getting sued by a major news organization because they're telling the truth. But in any event, there's some of the best retirement experts in the country. Let's see, Ted Benner, the guy who created the 401k, is a friend of mine. Ted Siddell, who's the biggest forensic attorney and pension fraud and things like that, he's in it. Robert Merton and William Sharp, who both have the Nobel Prize in economics. David Babel from Wharton, Olivia Mitchell from Wharton. So all these people, these really highly respected people in the retirement space, said, "Yeah, you should use annuities for retirement." And so the reason they had me is because I'm the guy who did all the research and showing where the companies do it. And like General Motors, how General Motors bought a $29 billion annuity, which they did. People don't believe me, Google it. They bought a $29 billion annuity in 2012, and Verizon bought one for like $8 billion. So because the thing is, a retirement plan, James, is to create retirement income. That's the purpose is. It's not to gamble. It's not to be another riverboat gambler.
Right.
But that's the retirement plan, is for retirement income. But that's something we've all forgotten. Well, you and I haven't forgotten. But this is. So anyway, so the movie came out, and also Moshe Mobilsky's a leading Canadian economist. Tom Hegna, the guy who he was the guy from New York Life, whatever. He's in it about income. So it was kind of nice that all the research we've been working on for all these years, all these experts saying, "Yeah, we should do this." But I just get my 50 seconds of fame,
So they left 50 seconds in there. They cut your part out, all but 50 seconds.
They had about 5-10 minutes segment on some of my research or interviews, but the investors said, "Well, we don't want to get sued by a big media company."
Right, I hear you. So what are you doing? What are you doing about it? What are you doing about all this? You're updating your book.
Yeah, I'm updating the book. It's generally so what was happened, James, is it's really been a nonstop financial orgy since 2008. Since it's still nothing's really changed at all. It's actually getting much worse. And so what we're seeing now, what is called blind pool investing. Now, blind pools are essentially raising money without any just raising money for a particular investor without any company in mind, and now they're called special purpose acquisition companies, or SPACs. So you get all these companies going, and so they're dumping all this stuff on the public. So you're seeing just incredible speculation like we've never ever seen. Which is, ironically, this is the same things that was happening in the 1920s. They call them blind pools. Now, I didn't realize that the last guy who was really using blind pools in a big way was Michael Milken in the 1980s. Because he was doing this in blind pools. So Milken was essentially duplicating what they were doing in the 1920s. Milken was doing in the 1980s. He went, then Executive Life went and Drexel went into bankruptcy and so forth. But now it's reappearing again, and it's just repackaged. Yeah. So I'm just trying to help people to understand what's going on with their money, because when they put their money in a brokerage firm and they read the arbitration agreement, essentially says, thanks for your money. If you make money, great. If you don't make money, it's still not our problem. And so that's what we're seeing. So, and then the whole indexing bubble, which is so roughly 50% of all money is indexed now, passively invested with Vanguard, State Street, ETFs, and so on. But the thing is, the problem with index investing, there really is there's no guardrails. I mean, you're getting down cost, but again, they're not producing retirement income. So, and the thing is, and so whether it be ETFs, and I'm not against them per se, but again, it's not producing retirement income. And the irony of the whole thing, you want to get this one, James? I couldn't believe it's like I was working my life. S&P Global, okay, which is S&P 500, we all know that in finance. You know what S&P Global did in 2018, James?
No, what'd they do?
They bought a friggin' annuity to fund their own pension plan. So the people who's kind of at the heart of the index couldn't make this up. Bought an annuity, I think $380 million, whatever. I think they bought it from Pacific Life to fund their own pension plan. And again, this is Bank of America, Merrill Lynch in the UK bought one for $519 million. Commerce Bank, Allied Bank, a lot of the British Bank, which are actually bought these enormous annuities as well. So anyway, so I'm just trying to give people the truth, and then they can decide. But the irony of the whole thing is people like Bank of America or Wells Fargo, all these companies who they all put a lot of their money in high cash value life insurance and annuities. And you couldn't make this up. I'm just digging them up one at a time, James.
Right. Right. Well, 300 in the last 20 years. Is that what the bankruptcies that you have uncovered?
Since 2000, roughly past 21 years, some major bankruptcies. Now, the whole thing, we're talking some pretty big freaking companies have gone bankrupt under private equity ownership. Toys R Us, Energy Future Holding, which I think is the largest utility in Texas, maybe?
Yeah, it was. GXU. Yeah.
GXU, yeah. Largest. They went bankrupt, yeah. Yeah.
Shoe companies, I mean.
Yeah, Payless Shoes. They went bankrupt. Yeah. No more Payless Shoes, no more, okay?
Yeah. And then they just do it again and again and again and again.
Yeah, that's what. It's called like a Chapter 22. Sometimes they'll go bankrupt once and then they go bankrupt again. That's called Chapter 22. There's actually some Chapter 33s which I've found as well. Some of them gone bankrupt 2 and 3 times. And when you start looking at the shenanigans that, as a company, if they go into bankruptcy, James, so when a company goes into bankruptcy, generally the shareholders, the equity owners, they get wiped out generally, okay? Right. So when a company goes into bankruptcy, it's the debt holders that essentially take over the assets because they have first lien against the assets of the company. So what the private equity guys have done, it's bizarre, but they do it all the time. They'll buy the distressed debt on the company. So the company they just put into bankruptcy. They buy the distressed debt. So when they go into bankruptcy, they end up owning part of the company they just put into bankruptcy at a great discount, right? At a great discount, okay. And by the way, they're deducting all the interest costs and the whole thing anyhow. Right. And by the way, we also a great example is Home Hostess cookies. Remember Twinkies and Hostess? I think they were based down. They were based down there. Yeah, everyone, ho-hos and ding-dongs. Where they went bankrupt twice. Yeah. They went bankrupt under. Was the Ripplewood Holdings, I think in 2008, 2009. And then they went back before that. And then Apollo Global Management bought them, and it went from a company with 18,000 employees down to like 1,200. And they bought it back in the cheap, and they flipped it into a SPAC, and who knows where it is. So and then a lot of the pension obligations get dumped on the taxpayer. Mm-hmm. So there's numerous instances where the private equity has dumped their obligation on the BBGC, essentially polluting the pool. And now the irony of the whole thing, James, is to get this one. I couldn't believe it. The Lehman Brothers, they went bankrupt, the largest corporate bankruptcy of all time. Was it 2008 or something like that?
2008.
Okay, so get this. So they dumped their pension plan onto the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And they got this one, Jay. Get this one. I don't know where these guys stick these things in. They had the healthcare tax credit. You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Listen to this one. If a company goes bankrupt and PPG is covering the pension plan, they get up to 75% credit from the IRS directly to cover their healthcare premiums between the ages of 55 and 70 or 65. So now they go to bankruptcy, but they're getting the taxpayer to pay 75% of the healthcare premiums of the retired workers. So it's like I couldn't believe that, but it's all true. But Lehman Brothers, after dumping their pension benefit, after dumping the pension into the PBGC, they got the healthcare tax credits. Now this is like 22,000 employees are on the Lehman Brothers plan. And so the taxpayer essentially were subsidizing the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy. And they're getting essentially almost free health care from the curse of the U.S. taxpayer. You couldn't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
And but the irony of the whole thing, James, you know what? When Lehman Brothers went into bankruptcy, they threw like 80 of their subsidiaries into bankruptcy as well. But you know what Lehman Brothers did in the U.K. to finance his own pension? You know what they did, James?
Bought an annuity. Right, but all you hear in the all-American average family, all they hear is life insurance is bad, poor place to put money, and annuities are atrocious. You lock your money up, they're high commissions, and anything else that they can use to disparage an annuity or an advisor or an agent who presents or promotes annuities, but that's where they're putting their money. Yeah,
okay, and that
makes perfect sense.
This gets become in the book, and I'm sharing this with people. Morgan Stanley, okay, which is, get bailed out by the taxpayer. They were allowed to become a bank holding company in 2008. They would have gone under Goldman and a bunch of other ones. How much do you think, James, now Morgan Stanley, these companies, they make most of the money gambling, mergers and acquisitions, wealth management. 60, 70% of the business really from gambling, moving money around, stocks, equities. So where do you think Morgan Stanley has their own pension plan? Where do you think they have their assets, James? Do you think how much in stocks do you think Morgan Stanley has of their own pension plan in the market?
I have no idea.
Just take a guess.
I'd just be pulling numbers out of the air. I have no idea. I'll start with 0. All right.
You win, okay?
Yeah.
And buried in the 10K, which I was like a god shot, okay, it's like, holy mother of God, I couldn't believe it. Then also Morgan Stanley bought an annuity to fund one of their domestic, one of their foreign pension plans, which had to be the UK, like 61 million. So my point is that the people making money, Morgan Stanley just got indicted the other day for block trading, all this. But my point is that what they recommend for the public, and what they do for themselves are two different things.
Yeah. And
that's what I'm just putting together in the book.
Well, when's that going to be out? When's that going to be available? Do you know?
Good Lord willing, I don't know. It's all right. I just got to. Luckily, I have some good help here, but it's just but the plan is to have it released by October, James, because of that's the anniversary of the executive life investigation.
Okay.
So it's a 20-year investigation, so I was kind of trying to tie into that. But that's, and because people now more than ever, they want to have, particularly in retirement, and actually there's been a whole bunch of surveys been done by Kraft and Cerulli Associates in Boston and Allianz and Transamerica and a whole bunch of companies that what people really want in retirement, James, they want to have peace of mind and guarantees.
Yeah.
This is what they want. This is what they really want. And but this is now the whole thing is that so this means using annuities. And matter of fact, now Fidelity has a new advertising campaign right now. I saw it about a month ago on TV. I couldn't believe they saw about the Fidelity income plan. And I went to the website, and what was the income plan? Well, it was essentially the core components of a real good retirement income plan were pension, obviously, Social Security, obviously, and annuities.
Yep.
People don't even Google it. Go to the website, so Fidelity income planning. So we know it's really a good thing. It's just, but we also know people 9 times out of I would say probably 95% of the time I'm going to be better off working with an advisor like you and me.
I agree with that. It's my understanding, if you go to Fidelity and, you're looking for an annuity, there's really about 3 or 4 companies that white label. There's life insurance companies that are actually issuing and guaranteeing those annuities, right? And it just... it's how much business do they want, the life insurance company, and they'll post a rate. They adjust the rate up or down, and it moderates or governs the amount of business, right? Fidelity is not guaranteeing those annuities.
Because actually Fidelity they're because most of Fidelity growth, because it's still a family business, it's still a privately held business, by the way. Yeah. And they do a good job. Don't get me wrong, their marketing, their services is exemplary, but. Fidelity is actually their own bond rating. It's not that great. It's like BBB. It's investment grade, but barely. Whereas instead of if a good life company, you're getting AA, AAA, single A, which is far superior than BBB. So they're not guaranteeing it, but the insurers are. And so the irony of the whole thing is, yes, it's really important. The Secure Act made this even more important. But people really need hand-holding, love, and caring, and looking at everything else. So that's what I've been working on the book, and then, also too is that really just to people that have peace of mind with their money, because when you look at Wall Street and the asset management industrial complex, they're always gambling with other people's money.
Asset money industrial complex. Is that what I heard you say?
I call it asset management industrial complex.
Oh, I love it.
I kind of stole that from Dwight D. What you call it about the military industrial complex?
Yeah, 1961, leaving office. Yep.
I call it the asset management industrial complex. It's just the average Wall Street pay right now is total pay, James. You know how much an average person makes on Wall Street?
I say $500,000.
You're right on, spot on, James. Around 436,000.
Yeah.
I mean, the average bonus this year, 2021, is $257,000. A bonus. You know what the median wages in this country for a family of 4 is?
I think 60.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, it's right around there.
Yeah.
So anyway,
but look, do you know the cost of living in New York is extremely high?
Yeah,
they're barely getting by.
Doesn't go very far in New York.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what I'm doing. So the thing is that, again, I'm not against investments, whatever, but when it comes to retirement planning, you really need to play the long game. And I found, James, I've been in this business long enough where I've had some clients have had 20, 30 years, 35 years. People who are sharp, who are really sharp, who play the market and the whole thing. Now they're in their 80s. A lot of them have some very big annuities and things like that. And there's no problem. And the thing is that as you get older, your intellectual capacity, and there's actually been a bunch of research pieces done in Harvard about this, I think your intellectual capacity in making financial decisions peaks around age 53. So the thing is, you want to have some guarantees, and but people now more than ever, and so that's really still really important, and people really have to stop listening to all the I don't know.
It's noise.
I call it almost financial pornography.
Yeah.
You
make a really good point about that. The financial acuity, you're reaching the peak at age 53. Several years ago, I read an article, and there was within the article, I learned that a male loses 1% of his muscle mass annually at beginning at age 50. All right, and so that caused me to start working out a lot more. And but within the article, it also said that men lose 3% of their financial cognitive abilities a year, starting at around age 70. So you make a very good point that the older we get, the less, the more uncomplicated structures and accounts is okay. Simplicity is a virtue. It is okay to, and really preferred, in my opinion, to simplify as we move into the retirement years, passive income time. It is okay to de-risk, just like all of these equity companies are doing. They're offsetting the risk of their pension to an insurance company.
This is my point. The banks are doing this, okay?
Exactly.
The people who gamble with your money are doing this.
Exactly. And
S&P bought one, annuity, okay? Don't believe me, Google it, folks. Don't believe me, S&P Global, like 2018, something like that. $370 million annuity with Pacific Life.
Yeah.
And they are the benchmark of all indexes. They are the benchmark of indexing. So the indexing benchmarking company is buying an annuity for its own account.
Wow. That tells you something. If you're paying attention, it's really clear. But it's kind of like I can't hear what you're saying because your actions are so loud. If you really pay attention to their actions, you'll know what to do. But if you listen to them, not so much, maybe. All right.
Yeah, and so we're just we've never seen this massive money printing, and this is the greatest of all time. And so I think people, they really need to, be prudent what they do. And, I love the market. Okay. I love my Google. I thank you, God, for the Google. I couldn't do the research what I do without Google. Right. Now, they probably track me incredibly, but
they do.
I know they do, but what a gift that has been. So I like my technology. I like my iPhones. I like my iPads. I have a lot of money invested in technology, a lot. So I'm a big believer in it. Don't get me wrong. So, but I'm saying when it comes to retirement, we really need to have guardrails and seatbelts around our money.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any better way to do that than life insurance and annuities. That's not. There are other things that you can do, and I get it.
Exactly.
But if I want a guaranteed income that I can rely on, no matter what the markets are doing or not doing, no matter what the interest rates are or are not, there's no better product than an annuity. In my opinion. All right. You can annuitize life insurance cash values. There's no question about that. But a guaranteed stream of income, just a guaranteed stream of income. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Nothing.
This is my point, is that like when Jeffrey Immelt, the former CEO in GE, okay, when he destroyed the company. He's kind of, he walked out the door with a $200 million retirement package, and $84 million of it was an annuity. He got like $3.47 million annuity for life for the rest of his life. So people, you have my books, James, and people can buy. Go to barryjamesdyke.com, and you buy them. But this is all your companies would be Exxon Mobil or Coca-Cola or Lockheed Martin. Actually, Lockheed Martin, that's a great example. Okay, the largest aerospace manufacturer in the world, I believe. I don't know, Boeing for military anything. I think Lockheed Martin's the biggest. Their entire pension system has been totally de-risked with annuities. I think they bought like $12 billion worth of annuities. So again, people that don't believe me, this will be in the next book. I even get a kick out of it. Even the Church of England bought an annuity. The Church of England used to be, I couldn't believe this. The Church of England, actually, they had their own pension plan. They invested in things like a Peter Cooper Bedford Stuyvesant. It was a leveraged buyout which went into default. And the Church of England actually got burned on a bad real estate deal in New York. But I was amazed. And I found this, and this is again the gift of the internet. Is that actually the Church of England bought an annuity for a couple $100 million to fund one of their pensions for their pastors, and actually, and I found another one. The Diocese of West Palm Beach bought an annuity for their clergy as well. So even people close to God buy annuities, So it can't be all bad.
No, it can't be all bad. They need guarantees too, on this side. So that's funny. All right. So look, the book's going to be out. The target date is October, 20-year anniversary of the investigation.
The investigation of executive life, I think is appropriate. Executive life imploded in 91. There wasn't a congressional investigation until October 2002. So that was kind of, when I was reading actually, the government, there's a great, people don't believe me, there's an executive, you can go online, it's about a 300-page congressional report on the collapse. But I thought it'd be appropriate because people said, what's the government going to do? What's the government going to do? Well, the government did nothing. And it took 11 years after the collapse. And so, and the state guarantee funds really got drained because of the collapse of executive life. Yeah. Now, Leon Black, which is now Apollo Global Management, made money. And Credit Lyonnais, which was a totally illegal transaction, they made money. The policyholders were protected, but a lot of them really got hurt when they were on structured settlement. So I think it's really, really important to look out for our fellows.
Yeah, and you mentioned the state guarantee associations. It's like the states are broke. All of the states are broke, but they have the power to raise taxes, no question. But the state guarantee associations are not funded by the states. They're funded by the life insurance companies. I mean, so my point here is we're paying for that. If we own life insurance in any form or an annuity or annuities, we're paying for that. We're paying. The consumer pays for everything. So we're paying for the state guarantee associations that these companies like Executive Life, and that's just one. That's a big one. But there have been many others. And
there's a lot of ones which are shaky. I mean, some of these, the Lindbergh, the Greg Lindbergh. Okay, people don't believe North Carolina, whatever. I think he's wearing an orange suit somewhere right now. But it was the same stuff. You got the life company to run a private equity firm, and essentially you try to bribe a bunch of state officials. It's what? It was horrible.
What? You mean politicians get paid too? Oh. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. So the companies you and I associate with, they're boring, but they have integrity. Yeah. And to me, the older I get, the more important integrity and honesty and love and caring for families is. It's just, so. But people need to know that. But this is what's going on. So people can buy your books.
They can get them from you, or they can go to barryjamesdyke.com. Yeah. Keep them coming. There's also, I have a mail list. You can go. Please sign up for it. As you know, I've been really busy with the research and running a business. So, between working on the book and just running the business now, I really haven't had much time to do a podcast. I'd love to do them like you do, but
the economic warrior.
the economic war. And you know, I've been really blessed. I mean, I had some great people, you know, from Noam Chomsky. I mean, I go all the way to the left and I go all the way to the right. I just like people who tell the truth.
Right.
And so, you know, guys like John Kay, one of the top economists in the U.S., Paul Craig Roberts. I just like truth tellers, you know, and Ted Bennett, the guy who created the 401k, Ted Siddell, the whistleblower, he made a $67 million judgment against JP Morgan. So a lot of really good people. And the millionaire next door, the Bill Danko, ended up being a friend of mine because of writing the books and stuff. So I've interviewed a lot of people, but it just takes a lot of time, and with COVID, kind of screwed everything up for me. But
well, how would one sign up for your newsletter?
Just go to barrydykes.com, and it says you can the newsletter somewhere. I should be more formal pushing that, but yeah, people can do it. I know it's somewhere on the website, and people sign up for it, and it's always good to see my good friend James, and you're really doing great things for people out there. I'm so proud of you, man.
Well, thank you. That means a lot coming from you. I'm very proud of you, and I'm appreciative that you're my friend and that you'll take your time out. I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on and share, and you're always welcome anytime. You should fly down here, you know.
Yeah, well, that's been the plan, but yeah, I'll be traveling the next 2-3 weeks anyhow. So, but I do want to get down there. We're gonna shoot some guns and stuff like that, and have some. Barbecue.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. I know where to shoot them.
Have some barbecue and stuff like that.
I know where the good barbecue is. Hey, you know that a couple of weeks ago, there's a local barbecue shop here, Massey's Barbecue in Alvarado, right? And there's other restaurants here, but I guess I mentioned Massey's. Well, here's the whole story. So I got a call, I got a phone call, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and Todd Massey, the owner of Massey's Barbecue, he just called and said, "Hey, James, you know, you had a client call in and he bought the office lunch. And so do you want us to cater it, or you want to come pick it up?" And I'm like, "What? How would they know to call you?" And he didn't know. So I asked the AV Ninja. I'm like, "How are they just and it was a beautiful lunch. We were all fed. We're all very appreciative." And I'm not asking to do that. I'm just sharing that, you know, mentioning barbecue. I guess I had mentioned Massey's Barbecue on a previous podcast because I asked the AV Ninja, I'm like, how would they know other than, you know, Googling up every restaurant, you know, in Alvarado? So thanks for letting me share that. Thanks for the barbecue. We greatly enjoyed it. Phil did that for us. But you come down here, I know exactly where to go shooting. Fabulous, whatever kind of shooting you want. Clays, traps, you know, 5-stand, whatever it is you want to shoot. And then I know all of the good barbecue places to go, and we'll hit them all. We'll get into a protein coma. Okay, we'll have meat sweats. We eat so much barbecue.
Well, I gotta keep going to the gym. I gotta keep going to the gym now these days, James. But no,
yes, you do, because you're going to lose 1% of muscle mass if you don't each year. So keep showing up.
I can believe it, but no, I feel great. Thank you, God. I feel actually as healthy as ever. So
yeah.
So
well, you look good. All right. What else, Barry? I mean, like I said, thank you for coming on. I greatly appreciate you. Is there, you know, any parting words that you want to leave with us?
Just give the money you don't want to lose to my friends like James.
Well, thank you. And you know, Barry, he still answers his phone. Castle Asset Management, right?
Yeah, we do this all around the country. I'm blessed, and so it's people just find me. So we still help people, and we're grateful to do it, you know, and we just keep going, trying to punch the clock for God, you know.
All right, keep pushing back the frontiers of ignorance. You know, if you don't do it, who will? If not you, who? Right? Who's going to write that book? Who's going to update your other book? Nobody. You. So make it happen. All right. All right. Thanks, Barry.
James, thank you so much. God bless you.
All right. God bless you.
See you down the islands.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Be careful.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.